And welcome back to our coverage of the 2019 election here on Gchs-Tv. I'm James Collier, joined with Principal Jason Smith. Mr. Smith, as we've been talking about, and we just heard a great interview with Haley Howard and our Department Chair, Eric Booz, a lot of the different elements that goes into this election, but as counties are really starting to report, starting to see a lot of red kind of consume the Bluegrass State.
Yes, and I think some of that is expected, and at the same time, Mr. Booz and I were talking just a few minutes ago. If you look, and I don't want to steal his thunder at all, at the western part of the state of Kentucky, in the last election, Governor Bevin only lost two or three counties. And now we're seeing probably 7, 8 counties that have flipped to Brashear. It is about a $35,000 or dollar, not a $35,000, 35,000 vote discrepancy with Matt Bevin in the lead right now. But there are counties that are flipping blue. I think all the red that we are seeing was to be expected. Democrats tend to do well in metropolitan areas. And as Mr. Booz said a few minutes ago, how big they win in those metropolitan areas will determine the outcome of this race.
Well, as you see on your screen currently, as we talked about, mostly red currently on the Bluegrass State, with about 45% of the counties reporting. But as we talk about those metropolitan areas, and this is something that you and I talked about at length last evening, Louisville, Frankfort, Lexington, those are areas right now that are predominantly blue, and that's where a lot of your metropolitan areas fall, where that higher population to where 3 or 4 parts of this state can overtake 15 to 20 counties.
Absolutely. Those metropolitan areas, just because of the sheer number of voting individuals in those areas, can do just what you described. I know Greenup County has approximately 36,000 people in our county. We're looking at Lexington, and I don't know the population of Lexington, but they could potentially cancel several rural counties. So that's the reason that those urban areas are very, very important to this election. And again, how big Andy Beshear wins in those areas. Because right now, as you mentioned, Lexington, Louisville, and a lot of the counties surrounding Lexington itself are going for Andy Beshear.
And looking at the numbers, that's early report from Fayette County, only 5% of the precincts showing. We're looking at roughly about 9,000 votes that have been recorded in Lexington, Fayette County area. And of course, we know there's way more folks that live in those areas than what are being reported in right now. But again, at the latest race, looking at about a 33,000 vote lead for Governor Bevin. And it's, again, one of those things that it's still way early in the race. Polls have only been closed for roughly about 2 hours. And even in the roughly just a little less than an hour than we've been on the air covering this broadcast, we've seen some little moves, but nothing that has really kind of jumped out at us and said, oh, wow, that's something huge.
Yeah, things are going as you would assume that they would. Mr. Booz, again, him and I talking a few minutes ago, it's hard to beat an incumbent. They have name recognition. They have literally governed, and they can run on that experience and have been there and have led the state in whatever way that they have. And, that experience, the fact that you've governed is very difficult to beat.
When you look at the northern part of Kentucky right now, you have Boone County that's showing with Governor Bevin. Approximately 98% of the polls have reported it looks like Governor Bevin will take that one. You skip over Kenton County, that is right now too close to call, roughly about 1,000 votes. And then you go to the opposite side of it, and the other side of Boone County, and that one goes to Governor Beshear. And it's amazing how such a small geographical area can have such different beliefs and different kind of thought processes when they go to the polls.
Yeah, and it's been interesting looking at Kenton and Campbell County. They've both kind of flipped from decided to undecided, and back and forth before Andy Beshear. And then you have Boone County just a little bit west of them. Those are the three counties that sort of border Cincinnati. Again, very urban, but at the same time, economically and even politically have been a very conservative area. So those two counties really surprised me. And there's some more counties in eastern Kentucky that are also starting to shade a little bit of blue. Knott County and Breathitt County. We've also got Wolfe County. So eastern Kentucky that has over the last several elections gone conservative is turning blue. But again, vast majority of the state, a lot of red counties.
One of the things that we have yet to point out during this broadcast, and I think it's very critical that we look at it at this time, again, we talk about the populations of some of these locations. That's including the fact that everybody does go and vote. And I think this is an election that we've spoke with several people throughout the day and in preparation for the event, talking with people at the polls. We saw large, vast of populations in just about every area that we spoke about, that the polls stayed busy throughout the day.
Yes.
And that's one of the things you want to see. There were several people that wanted to be heard, and that's the only way you can be heard in this point. Get out and vote, and we saw that throughout the afternoon.
Absolutely. And, looking at social media, having conversations with people, throughout the days, weeks, months prior to this election, this governor's race has mobilized a lot of people to be civically minded, to know what the issues are, and to go exercise their right to vote, and that's a great thing.
Well, while we are still kind of at a standstill, we'll talk a little bit more about the map in a little bit. I kind of want to bring up the broadcast tonight. And again, for those of you who are hanging in there with us, apologies for some technical issues. Again, first ever time we've tried to do something like this. And I don't want to say that we've bitten off more than we can chew, but I like big challenges. And I hat tip to all the crew here for Gchs-Tv for being able to put together something like this. And what just an unbelievable amount of work that they've put in to make this happen.
The technology expertise of these young people is just unbelievable, and we wanted to give them the opportunity to get involved, get their hands on some of this technology, at the same time market our school, market our community. It's just been a very positive experience so far, and we look forward to seeing what these young people come up with.
Well, and the good thing is that, yes, we've had some technical issues tonight, but the most important thing is we're grinding through.
Absolutely.
We will battle through, no matter how many times our network continues to bop us off, but we will persevere. And it's one of the things, when you look at today's society, it's very technology-based. And to have the opportunity to not only put our students in this ability to do something like this, but also to watch them excel, it's pretty neat to see.
The young people of today are way beyond creative in terms of anything that we could have ever imagined in our younger days, and their creativity is just amazing. And again, putting the technology in their hands and just letting them run with it and see what they can produce and come up with, their creativity is, we've looked at some of their podcasts and some of the things that they've produced. It's just amazing. They're very, very talented young people.
Yeah, you talk about their podcast. One of the things they have to do in class, they had to create a video podcast or a vlog, whatever you want to call it. But they had to pick a topic that they could carry through all the way until May. And I had one group that decided, okay, we're going to go with a cooking show. Then we had another group that said, okay, we'll be the taste testers of the cooking show. Then we have a group that decided to do senior hacks, and it was really neat. They formulated their name based off the first letter of their last names. But they do different ideas of things seniors from high school need to make that step into college.
Yes.
Changing a tire, washing clothes, balancing a checkbook, little things that you need to know. That's things we see from there. We have a sports show. We have a music show. And all of this is being done with technology here at Greenham County High School.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to, be able to have those resources, and I am a firm believer that, any time that we can take what we have been blessed with in terms of resources and put it in kids' hands, and a lot of times all you and I have to do is just get out of their way, and they're creative, and they're just amazing, talented young people, and I think our future is very bright.
And one of the things that you talk about, you and I doing stuff like this back in our day, the old video camera, was a small cinder block you put up on the shoulder. Now we have kids doing this with iPads. I mean, we're sitting here staring through the studio. We have 3 iPads staring back at us, and the amount of technology that's being placed in their hands is second to none.
Absolutely, and one of the things I'm very pleased with is, you take that technology, you put it in their hands. They are being creative, and at the same time, we get to showcase them, their talent, and the things that they come up with, the product that they're putting out there, and it goes out to everybody. Anybody has access to it, and I think it's going to pay huge dividends for our school and for these young people.
Well, we'll keep you abreast on how things are going. My producer has not been screaming in my ear, so I'm hoping that means everything is rolling smooth. Murphy's Law decided to show up this evening about 6:30.
Yes.
After he and we spent most of the afternoon doing tests, everything was rolling smooth, and then Murphy said, "I like this over here." I guess it may have showed up when the pizza came in.
Yeah.
But we persevered through it. We are on YouTube now. We had to make a change from our streaming session, but if you're on YouTube, shoot us a message. We would love to interact with you. Let us know what you think of the broadcast. We'll do that coming up in the second hour of the broadcast. We're going to be with you until at least 10 o'clock tonight. And again, we would love to stay with you and make the call on our gubernatorial race. Things have heated up in the last 5 minutes. And what we're going to do, we'll talk about that on the other side of this next break. But before we do that, we have another member of our broadcast team at the courthouse in Greenup County. Zane Bauer is on location. We're going to talk with him on the other side of the break. He'll get us caught up with the poll results from Greenup County in all of the races, because also we have the Attorney General as well as the Secretary of State, Department of Agriculture. All of those races are going on. We'll catch you up on those as well and update you of where the gubernatorial race stands, as things it's tightened very much so over the last 5 minutes. That's when we return as we continue our 2019 election coverage right here on Gchs-Tv. You're bringing you live election coverage of the 2019 election. Let's go to the telephone lines at the Greenup County Courthouse. Joining us there, Zane Bauer. He's going to get us caught up on all of the election coverages from Greenup County, including the other elections that's going on tonight from the Attorney General, Secretary of State, Department of Agriculture. So we'll go live to the courthouse for Zane. Zane, good evening and thanks for joining us.
59.93%. Democratic Party has 2,429 votes and a 39.23%. Libertarian Party has 52 votes with a 0.84%. Governor and Lieutenant Governor, Matt Bevin has 5,905 votes with a 52.41%. Beshear has 5,102 with a 45.29%. Hicks has 259 votes and a 2.30%. For Secretary of State, Adams has 6,213 votes with a 55.71%. Henry has 4,939 with 44.29%. Attorney General, Cameron has 6,544 with a 58.76%. Stumbo has 4,593 votes for 41.24%. All right, Auditor for Public Accounts, Harmon has 6,384 votes with 58.15%. Donahue has 4,272 with a Center of Agriculture. Quarles has 6,351 with a 57.93%. Conway has 4,266 votes with 58.91%. Gilpin has 346 with a 3.16%. And that is live from the courthouse.
All right, thank you, Zane, for reporting live from the courthouse as we get all of our election results from Greenup County. And as we've been through the last couple of minutes, as Mr. Smith and I were talking, we saw a very significant influx of votes as well as race tightening very closely now, as Governor Matt Bevin holds less than a 1% lead over Andy Beshear, with roughly both seeing close to 500,000 votes being reported. Bevin at 470, Andy Beshear at 461. And this race is tightening, and it was coming in. We kind of expected a very nip and tuck kind of neck and neck battle, and that's exactly what we appear to be seeing here as the evening grows on into the second hour after polls have been closed. We will step aside for a break. When we return, Haley and Mr. Booz will join us again. They'll continue talking about tonight's election coverage as well as looking into deeper issues with how both the candidates kind of stood on their platforms. That's when we continue our coverage of the 2019 election here on Gchs-Tv. We're back in just a few moments.
Of the race of the 2020 presidential election.
Well, there's a couple races going on right now. Arizona, Mississippi. I believe that's right. Maybe I spoke too soon. Anyway, there's a couple governor's races tonight that are going to tie himself to Trump, try to ride the Trump popularity in Kentucky, hoping that the Trump rally in Lexington would do him a lot of good, and we are trying to figure that out now. So as these governor races are being hatched out over the next week, they're going to get into these numbers, and they're going to adjust their campaigns. If they realize, hey, you know, Andy Beshear, if he wins, he ran this message in a red state and was able to win. Maybe the Democrats start looking into doing something like that, pull some of those Trump voters that maybe voted for Obama. Those were a famous discussion point in 2016, Obama voters who switched to Trump. How do you bring those guys back around? And if Beshear wins here, I think that would be a place I would look for a strategy of reclaiming some Democratic voters that maybe flipped to Trump in 2016. So there are national implications. Trump is watching, of course. All the Democratic candidates, many of them are paying attention, and they're going to be using this race, the messaging here, and tooling their campaigns.
The government race has been polled over the last several weeks, but several of Donald Trump's endorsements for Matt Bevin seems to be paying off here in the early reporting. We will have to see if this holds true throughout later this evening. What are the voter turnouts looking like for tonight's election?
I looked at a couple counties, just curious of what voter turnout looked at. Like, as Mr. Smith was saying earlier, a lot was made about low voter turnout, people not getting engaged, not getting out to the polls, maybe not excited in 2015, but both sides have really kind of upped the intensity and pushing for their base to come out and vote, to make a difference, and it seems like it's happening. Where Beshear is gaining votes, but Bevin is up from his vote totals in the same places from 2015. So, for example, Boone County, which is a place we talked about, one of those northern Kentucky counties that have been so important for Republicans. In 2015, you had about 20,000 people voting, and in 2019, with 98% reporting, they're at 38,000, so 15,000 more people relatively making it to the polls this year over 2015. And then in our own Greenup County, we had 7,700 people showing up in 2015. We are up to 11,000 this year showing up to vote. So the people are interested in the race, and it's still very close. So the Mobilize Your Base campaign, get people out to vote, is seeming to benefit both sides right now, and it's keeping it close. However, we're looking right now at the fact that Beshear has stepped ahead with a estimated 80% of the vote in Kentucky. He is up 556,000 votes roughly to Bevin's 543,000. So Beshear is leading now at a 49.6 to Bevin's 48.4. And a lot of these votes have just started pouring in from Louisville, which is where you expect to have a huge Beshear surge, and it is coming in. We hoped for the Beshear team, if you're on his side, that you saw people in Louisville showing up, because those are going to be big percentages for him, and he is already topping or on pace to top Conway's totals. He has already topped Conway's totals from 2015 this year, which is exactly what we said earlier, exactly what Beshear needed. More people showing up from Louisville, more people showing up from Fayette County than even showed up for Conway. And he's getting it, and that's where we see his lead, which seems to only be increasing now. So he's up to 50% now just in the past couple of minutes. He's up to 600,000 votes to Bevin's 567,000. So we are getting into some interesting numbers here. Again, Louisville showing up. They're almost fully reported. Now, when the Louisville numbers are fully reported, that's when the rest of the state, as it unfolds, that's going to be the decider. They're going to start doing the math in the Beshear headquarters and the Bevin headquarters. They're going to start estimating how many votes are going to go for Beshear in Louisville, and now where are the rest of the votes? Where are they going to come from? Are they going to come from the western part of the state? Do we have a pocket here? How many precincts haven't come from the rural counties? So everyone's going to be crunching numbers, doing math, saying where can we still make gains after Louisville comes in. Everyone should have expected a big surge for Beshear from Louisville. And depending on how large it is and what's left will determine how nervous Matt Bevin is becoming right at this moment.
In this year's election, why do you think the numbers in our Greenup County have taken a rise?
I don't know.
What's the difference in this year's election?
I could answer that. I could get into that. I think that I think generally speaking, the whole get out the vote mentality really took hold this year. In 2015, the election was extremely quiet. It seemed like only people who always paid attention to politics even knew it was happening. I remember bringing it up to folks saying, we got the governor's election, and people were like, I didn't realize there even was one. This year it was hard to ignore, right?
I think it's the controversial part of both the Beshear and Bevin, their values they've held.
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
And they've campaigned with.
Yeah, certainly the difference in the campaigns. But, I mean, when you think about the pace, you guys were talking about technology earlier, Mr. Smith, Mr. Collier, and you think about the pace of technology. I mean, just like the classroom is changing with technology, our political culture is changing with technology. So it's harder to not know something is coming up if you spend time on Facebook. I mean, people are spending a couple hours a day. I mean, I saw on Facebook earlier 10 people, like, I voted, you should vote, all this kind of stuff. It's like, it's getting harder and harder for folks to not
avoid
to not be aware of what's going on. And they're interested. They're interested in it. They're getting involved. And we'll have to see if that holds on. But I do think the fact that the information campaigns have worked and people have now kind of these mobile information devices, and they're getting the information, they're showing up to vote. And we are still rolling in here. We still got the Louisville's, or the Jefferson, I keep saying Louisville, that's in Jefferson County. Jefferson County is reporting in at 90% now, going large for Beshear as expected, and now he holds a 50% to Bevin's 47%. So he's liking what he's seeing now again, and the next step is looking at the other counties. What hasn't reported? We haven't heard anything from Adair County, Hart County. You started getting into the central western part of the state, Grayson County. Davies County is looking close, and there's some votes to pick up there, and these could be deciding votes. Most of eastern Kentucky is kind of rolled up. Pike County going for Bevin with 9,000. Floyd County kind of countering some of that, going for Beshear, which we said was important earlier. Floyd going Democrat. It looks like Beshear did flip or was able to make the edge on Boyd County, take Boyd County. It's a little closer than I expected. I thought there may be a big swing for Beshear there. He did get the big swing. 8,000 more votes or 800 more votes. Pretty significant for a smaller eastern Kentucky county. We roll through the north, and then again, Bevin is going to be sad about Kenton and Campbell County. While he picked up a lot of votes there, not getting the majority, those are counties he really needed to get the majority of. He needed those counties, and they did not. They showed up for him, but Beshear's people showed up in greater numbers, and that's how you lose an election. Yes.
What about some of the other races tonight? What's going on with those?
Okay, so we got some other things going on. This is from PBS, Public Broadcasting. And there's some other races you may hear about. Again, we don't have the legislators up, so if Beshear's numbers hold and he wins, he'll have to face Republicans in both the Kentucky House and Senate. And I'm sure, again, as everyone's watching the numbers, both sides are preparing their strategies as well. It's a complicated system. So the Agricultural Commission's position, which is always a heavily campaigned one in Kentucky, an agricultural state, a rural state, good, hard-working people, people who move the earth with their hands. These are great people, right? Ryan Corliss is called the winner of that, winning 58% of the vote over Robert Conway. I think this one was everyone was pretty sure about it. Ryan Corliss seems to be a guy that has been successful in that position. Conway put up a kind of an opposition to him. But one of the interesting things to think about here is Kentucky may be one of the places in the country you're seeing what we call split ticket voting. That's where you show up and you vote for different parties. You say, well, I like this Republican, and down the ticket, I like that Democrat, and all of those things.
It's not party-based.
Yeah, and we've seen an increase of that over the past decade, but in Kentucky, it seems like that old system of just kind of picking the favored candidate, regardless of party, is still holding on in a time where that may be becoming increasingly rarer. So if Beshear wins and Ryan Corliss wins big as the agricultural commissioner, it's kind of a sign that we have still a kind of a healthy split-ticket voting system in Kentucky where people are willing to not vote the party line.
Right.
Whether you think that's good or not, is, of course, a political question. But we go on to Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General. This race got a little bit nasty between him and Greg Stumbo. Greg Stumbo used to be the Speaker of the House in Kentucky, and Daniel Cameron got an endorsement from Trump. He got a nice picture in the White House with Trump. The Lexington Herald published a very controversial cartoon about Daniel Cameron following Trump. Got a lot of negative play, and it looks like Daniel Cameron is up there, again, a Republican winning 13% or 13 percentage points above Greg Stumbo. And Stumbo famously got unseated in 2016 by, and he was the Speaker of the House, and this was like a big tragedy as the Democrats were kind of swept out of the House then. Mike Harmon is called for the state auditor, another Republican winning there. And then we have the governor's race where Andy Beshear is still holding 3 percentage points over Matt Bevin. So again, very interesting. We've got the big tickets. We got Republicans winning down the ticket, except that governor's position, which is still a lead for Beshear with the incumbent Bevin, but we still have enough votes pouring in that we're going to have to see what ends up happening there. The Secretary of State's race, though, is pretty close. You have Heather French. She's from Mason County. She was Miss America in the year 2000 against Michael Adams. He's up by about 2 percentage points. So that'll be a close one. That's to take Allison Lundergan Grimes' Secretary of State position, overseeing elections and things of that sort. It's an important office in the state, any state, and it doesn't get a lot of attention. Obviously much different than the national, but still an interesting race to watch there. And then some special elections there through the state. But and Allison Ball has been called for the treasurer. She was a popular candidate there, popular treasurer. Did a lot of campaigning. Everyone seems to like her. Every time I see her campaigning, everyone's enjoying out. No one has anything bad to say about her. She's just one of these people, and it seems like that's carrying her in now. So we still have Beshear up, again, about 2 percentage points over Bevin, and 96% coming in from Jefferson County. So close, but Beshear leading, and he's probably feeling pretty healthy about this with a 31,000 vote lead.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
What do you think about the platforms of each of the candidates? Can you elaborate on their platform?
Yeah, I think to an extent, what we've seen, because I think that the campaigns turned away from platforms and turned towards maybe attack a lot. So, and that seems to affect maybe local races and things like that. But the platform of, say, a guy like Matt Bevin, he's run a lot on business. He's run a lot on family values, on these on anti-abortion legislation. He's run on his economic record, kind of this idea of lower taxes, of personal responsibility in work. He has done some controversial things that Andy Beshear wanted to bring up in this election to see if he could defend, and that's kind of what we're doing here. Beshear, again, running different than national Democrats, staying away from the explicit pro-abortion stance, but then saying he wants to, reaching out to teachers, public workers, to try to smooth over the big bumps that were created during the pension issue over the past 2 years, and kind of a platform of medical expansion, almost recovering some of the policies that were rolled back by Bevin from the Obama administration, like Connect, KYNEECT, which is kind of a version of a Medicaid expansion that was rolled back by the Bevin administration. Beshear doing a lot of campaigning on medical costs in Kentucky. So an important issue that I think plays well in rural counties. It's a issue that he was smart to run with against Bevin, because in rural areas there is a lot of government funding that goes into health care, right? Medical card recipients, Medicare, Medicaid, all of that. So saying we're going to expand or use or increase those policies, smart move from Beshear. So I see a lot of differences on Medicaid, Medicare. I'm not so sure about the pension plans and all of that. That stuff is hard to detail in a campaign. So if anyone wants to do any work with that, it's going to have to be nuts and bolts, getting, you know, hands dirty with the legislator to try to hatch that out, because it's hard to run on an extremely detailed plan about a financial situation like that. So just a kind of a general attitude on those two things, a difference there, I would say. And then there's perception.
What's Brashear have in store for us as far as his platforms? You said that Bevan runs on economic business.
I mean, Bashir is going to be interested in bringing business as well. He may be interested in different types, though. Bashir may be looking at how government can be involved in improving the ability of the average worker, where Bevan has been more interested in pleasing the business.
Right.
It's a classic split you've seen over the past 50, 60 more years between Republicans and Democrats, is the approach of saying we need to do what we can to bring the businesses in, and then the workers will get what they need, versus we need to make sure we protect the workers so that the businesses that come in can't abuse the workers and things like that. So it's kind of a different approach to the business issue. And with things like Bashir, he'd be interested in, say, rolling back right to work, where you'd have, you know, some stronger union issues there. Certainly be interested in that, especially because you see him going to union halls. He was at the Steelworkers Hall in Ashland, things like that, trying to keep those Eastern Kentucky union workers kind of on his voter rolls. And it seems to have been working here. Again, you've got Breathitt County, Knott County. I mean, these are what you think of as southern, southeastern Appalachia. Floyd County, Magoffin, Wolfe County. These are counties that are turning for Mr. Bashir, which he's got to be happy about. It's showing maybe he had more appeal in the rural areas than we may have expected. And he's got to love seeing that. He's got to love seeing it, because you got to have more than Louisville. We're one of the first states, or one state that our rural population can outnumber our urban population.
We're going to go off to break. This is what we have for 2019's election coverage on Gchs-Tv.
And welcome back to Gchs-Tv's coverage of the 2019 election. I'm James Collier, joined again by Jason Smith, principal of Greenup County High School. Mr. Smith, the last time you and I were on, we were talking a landslide started. I think the landslide has turned into an avalanche. And one of the things that we saw, and this was one of the things we talked about at the beginning of this broadcast, what would happen with those 4 critical cities in Kentucky: Lexington, Louisville, Georgetown, and Paducah. Well, Louisville has shown up and shown up big, and by doing so, with approximately 96% of the votes in, Andy Beshear is at almost a 2-to-1 vote over Governor Matt Bevin, 178,000 to 83,000, and by doing so, we're currently seeing in the latest polls with about 92% reporting that Andy Beshear holding over a 20,000 vote lead.
Yeah, and that total has fluctuated a little bit. It's been as high as 30,000, I believe. So it's starting to tighten just a bit again. But it's coming to an end very soon, because we only have about 7 or 8 counties that haven't reported anything, and they're very far western Kentucky and very sparsely populated counties. They're not real big counties. So barring a miracle, Governor Bevin making a comeback doesn't seem likely right now.
Well, let's take a look at our latest map. And again, this was as of about 8:30. So we see there at about 92% reporting. There's not a lot of blue, and that's one of the things that you have to understand. When you look at the map, you can't look at the number of counties that is required. You have to look at the population, and those blue counties, those are the highly populated counties that have really taken Andy Beshear to the top. And again, you look at Louisville coming in with almost a 2-to-1 difference, going in at Lexington in Fayette County. Again, almost a 2-to-1, 73,000 to just under 40,000. And it goes back to the question, everyone said the teachers have to stand up and make their voices heard. From Lexington, Frankfort, Louisville, especially looking at Jefferson County and the history that we've heard and seen between Governor Bevin and Jefferson County public school systems, it appears that in this case, the teachers are being heard loud and clear.
I think so, and in addition to that, I think that some of the other cities, and I hesitate to use the term secondary cities, but cities that are on a kind of the second tier in terms of population. I just looked at, for example, a few minutes ago, the Owensboro area. Governor Bevin is winning, but he's only winning by about 800-900 votes. And then you also, as we talked earlier about Ashland, actually going for Andy Beshear in Boyd County. Those second-tier cities in terms of population, we either have them going for Andy Beshear or it's a very, very tight race.
When we look at this, and we hope that this is not where it heads, but of course, when you see the votes and so tightly contested race, you have to think back a few years of the race in Florida for governor. We expect to see this race called probably within the next hour, again, with only about 7% of the state still yet to report. But with a 20 to 25,000 vote swing, I expect a recount to be called upon on this one, especially if Governor Bevin finds himself on the losing side.
I think so, and right now we're at about a 21,000 vote difference. If that tightens 15,000 votes or less, I don't know what the magic number is, but you may expect Governor Bevin to ask for a recount.
Looking ahead, if this holds true, and right now Andy Beshear roughly at 660,000 votes to Governor Bevin 639, should Andy Beshear become our governor-elect and take over, it would be, again, another Republican that did not earn re-election. But you look at where this state moves. Does it make the move that many want to see, or does the kind of the businesses and everything that Governor Bevin believes that he brought toward this area, did they pull away because of the different values that then Governor Beshear would have at that point?
To be determined. I mean, a lot of that will depend on how things progress as we move into the legislative session in the winter. As Mr. Booth said earlier, we will have a split government in the state of Kentucky. with both houses of the state legislature being very strongly Republican. And the old saying, if the results continue as we are seeing them now, and Andy Beshear does become governor, there is a huge difference between campaigning and governing, and navigating the waters of having a split government and a legislature that is very, very heavy Republican is going to be very difficult moving forward for Andy Beshear if he were to win.
One of the things coming into this election, and this was one of the ploys that Governor Bevin used in his campaign tactics, but he compared Andy Beshear a lot to his father. And we look back at the times that he was our governor and the things that happened in this state. And it's when you look at what Andy Beshear has promised off of his campaign, it certainly looks like it's a much different avenue. And again, as you said, to be determined.
Yeah, to be determined. I mean, there's the state of Kentucky has budget issues. When you look at the state budget, there are two ways to correct budget issues. That's either cut spending or increase revenue. And I do not anticipate that the state of Kentucky is going to look at cutting spending. I mean, we have at the state level vital services that we provide our citizens, such as public education. So I think a Beshear governorship is going to have to look at the revenue side of things and how do we bring in more tax revenue to the coffer, so to speak, and then getting the Republican legislature to agree to that budget or agree to those changes in the tax code is going to be extraordinarily difficult.
One of the things I know that Andy Beshear has been big on is legalized gambling in the state. And he said that when you look at what the state of Kentucky has to offer, there's so much revenue going outside the state. And there's three main locations. One there close to Evansville, there outside of Louisville, and then, of course, up near Cincinnati with the riverboats. And it's something that, sure, there's goods and bads to both sides. But when you look at the revenue, people from our state are leaving, and he believes that's stuff that he can pull back in and bring the revenue, which then allows you to help fund the pension system, help fund the education system, which a lot of the states you see have successful programs supporting that.
Yeah, and there's other ways of doing that as well, other revenue streams that are potentially out there. Value-wise, the state of Kentucky is going to have a conversation about if that's what they want to do. Again, Kentucky over the last several decades has been a very conservative state. We've talked about the Bible Belt earlier. Having that conversation about doing those type of things, such as legalized gambling, possibly the legalization of marijuana, like states like Colorado have done. Kentucky is going to have those conversations if we get a Beshear governorship.
Now, one thing I want to point out when we talk about the legalization of marijuana, and again, we are no way by saying this is what needs to happen or what should happen, but one thing that I will say, when I visited New York this past summer, I was shocked to learn that New York had legalized marijuana, because it was one of the things, of all the states that we did visit, it was one of the few places I felt like that we walked through that I did not smell in certain locations. And it's kind of one of those things that you have to wonder, is it one of the things when you make it okay to do, it's no longer cool to do because people like to do sometimes things they're not supposed to. But it's at the forefront, and you see more states now making that step forward than not.
And Ohio has progressed towards that direction. I don't think Ohio is going full legalization. They're doing
2020 in our next presidential election. Times are changing. Things are changing in this country, not only just in this state, but all of the continental United States, that things that 25, 30 years ago that you would have never thought were going to be even a possibility, we're finding now are showing up on ballots and being voted by the citizens.
Sure, and you're all, at the same time, those things are being voted on, and you're always going to have that contingency of folks on the other side that is questioning the direction of our country, the direction of our values. There is that group of folks that will hold on to those traditional family-oriented type values, and it will be interesting. Kentucky is in the middle of that, with states around us doing different things to increase revenue, and are we going to start heading in that direction?
Well, let's take a look at a couple of the other races as we've been talking about tonight. The Kentucky Secretary of State, Republican Daniel Cameron, has defeated Gregory Stumbo by a landslide there. And again, that's another thing you were talking about. Should Beshear hang on, you're going to see a lot of Republicans in the House. You're going to see a lot of and the Democrat kind of sitting in the seat. And when we've had that split House kind of things in the past, how does that change the complexity of what happens as far as the lawmakers go once they come into session?
It's the old term of gridlock, and I think what it does, it doesn't mean that governing stops or heated. We see a lot of disagreement, not just within the government, but among citizens. We see that a lot on the national level right now as well.
For Kentucky Treasurer, Allison Ball has secured the victory over Michael Bowman, a 60 to 40% win there for Allison Ball State. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'm going to be joined by Eric Booz. I got a couple of questions I want to pick his brain for. He's the mastermind tonight. I love having both of you guys here with the history backgrounds, and we're very grateful of both of you joining us here tonight. You're watching the 2019 election coverage here on Gchs-Tv. We're back right after this.